Good evening and welcome to Thursday's edition of Hotline Live with Record Sport. I'm Daniel Caw and I'm delighted to be joined by the one and only Andy Newport. Andy, how's it going?
Very well, yeah. Busy couple of days for you boys.
It's always good. It's always good to have you on, Andy. You're one of my favourites, if I'm being honest.
Oh, flattery will get you everywhere, Daniel.
Listen, I can go up the road if you want, boys. I'm perfectly happy to do that.
I'm just trying to get a relationship like you and Scott have got, Keith. That's what I'm trying to find.
Yeah, these things have to come naturally, can't be forced.
Keith, it's lovely to see you as well, of course. Busy 24 hours?
Wow. Yeah, just a little bit. Daniel, let's be honest, let's get it right. When we were sat in the studio last night, or when I was sat in the studio, I can't remember, were you in here?
Aye.
Right, okay, that's how easily you ought to forget. When we were sat in here, you know I'm joking, but I kind of anticipated that there might be a bit of scepticism about the story we were breaking. And I get that, I get it, because, as we said last night, you know, Rangers fans might think it's too good to be true. Celtic fans, they wouldn't wish it to be true. And they can all get together and form the same conclusion that it can be filed safely under P for probably not right. I think, you know, we sat here, Daniel, and I said, look, the story's true. This is real. It's happening. It's a thing. The San Francisco 49ers, or their investment arm, are actively in discussions with Rangers. These discussions have reached an advanced stage, and I think it's more likely than not that it gets over the line. There's an American consortium involved, as we know, with at least one other high net worth individual, and there's Paraag Marathe, I think is the pronunciation, who is also the chairman and owner of Leeds United. Well, 49ers Enterprises are the owners, and he's the chairman. So yeah, what I think is the scepticism and the cynicism might have evaporated a little bit. I think the whole world now knows the story's true. So now we can get round to having a proper conversation about it.
Well, look, the viewers that tuned in last night, you know, they probably don't want to hear from you and I again, Keith, having the same conversation. Not. But Andy, so what did you make of the news?
Well, I mean, it was a huge scoop, and congratulations to Keith for it. Listen, I think it's something that Rangers fans have been crying out for. I think it's important to say, first of all, that for all that the current regime have been derided of late because of their handling the club, I do think you have to point out that whatever state Rangers are in right now, it might be an awful lot worse without 4 or 5 of these individuals that were prepared to pony up and put their own money where their mouths were in terms of getting the club back off the hands of Mike Ashley and the Easdales. I mean, listen, I know that a lot of folk are deeply unhappy with the way things are going right now. 3 trophies in the last sort of 10, 15 years, but that's probably 3 trophies more than might have been the case had Dave King and the Three Bears and other guys involved not taken over the club in 2015. So I think it's important to point out that those guys have, you know, as I say, put their money in, millions of pounds worth of their own money in in an attempt to get the club into a better place. Decision made, their intent, their intent was always there for the best of the club, and it's just not worked out for a number of reasons. But I think definitely this is something that the club requires, a fresh impetus, a fresh energy. I think it was Dave King when I and a couple of other journalists spoke with him a few months back when he was trying to tip himself for a return as chairman, was speaking about investor fatigue. And I think you've seen that. I think whether it be John Bennett running out of energy and amidst the shambles at the start of the season, whether it be Douglas Park just wanting to take a step back, you know, or the falling out with Dave King, this has not been a unified, well-functioning board at the top, and so something drastically different was required.
Andy, can I ask you? I know that you're quite close to these guys. The information that we're getting is Dave King is among the first of the major shareholders to put his hand up to accept this deal. Are you hearing likewise? Anybody
that would
else?
be absolutely no surprise to me. He's been keen to get rid of his shares and get his money back for a long time. I mean, obviously he had a deal done with Club 1872 that never really got off the ground in terms of the financing for it. So he's been, I think he's spoken publicly a number of times about the fact that whilst he's a big Rangers fan, his family, his children aren't that invested emotionally in the club, and his worry would be that if he was to pass away with them in control of his shares, what would become of those shares? So he was keen to hand them over to Rangers fans. I don't think that, as I say, that the funding never got to the stage where that could happen. So I think what's key to all this, and it'll be key to the rest of the board being willing to share, to sell their shares, is the fact that these people are serious individuals. You don't own an NFL franchise without being, proper bona fide, businessmen and know what you're doing. And obviously you can see what they're doing at Leeds. All looks very impressive so far. Obviously they're on track to qualify for to win, not only just to get promotion back to the Premier League, but to win the Championship outright at 2 point ahead. They've got a 7 point gap on the team in third, so it looks like automatic promotion is well within their reach. I was doing a wee bit of digging today, speaking to some people down at Leeds. Spoke to Eddie Gray, one of the Leeds legends, obviously former Scotland international, Glasgow born. He's talking about the new stadium or the improvements to the stadium down at Ellen Road that they're hoping to do. So I mean, they've got some big plans for Leeds, and the Rangers fans will be hoping that they can come up to Glasgow with similar sort of lofty ambitions. Because as I say, as needed, there's been a staleness, and that's definitely something that's needed. Just that fresh blood, fresh energy coming into the club.
Daniel, I think it's important to say there's a little bit of breaking news here.
On.
And just, a couple of minutes before we come on the show, we can reveal that the SFA are not going to challenge, or are very unlikely to block in any way the 49ers and the consortium in general, and certainly specifically relating to Paraag Marathe, who, there was a suggestion about dual ownership because of his position as chairman at Leeds, and how that might affect any potential kind of if he was looking to get a seat on the Rangers board, for example, which I would rather imagine that he probably will be. So it's my understanding on this that the SFA are completely relaxed about it. They see no reason to challenge it, and in fact, they already have a set of precedent with Bill Foley, the owner of Brighton, successfully getting appointed to the Hibs boardroom. And I think that under those circumstances, there is no sort of threat to the legitimacy of or the integrity, of Scottish football, because Leeds United can't play against Rangers. So that is not an issue for the SFA. It could become an issue for UEFA further down the line, funnily enough, if both clubs were to qualify in the same season for the same European competition. But there's ways around that as well. You've seen it with Manchester United and Nice, and with Bill Foley's Brighton and Union Saint-Gilloise in Belgium. So these things, that I think that's a good bit of news. I do think the Americans had it all worked out in advance, well in advance. The legal teams have been all over it. So I think that they were very confident in that. But I think that give them a little bit more assurance that they're not going to hit a potential roadblock there in any way, shape or form. Yeah.
Well, look, the comments are coming in thick and fast, as you can imagine. And if you're watching at home, please let us know what you think of the latest news. Rangers at Easy OK chimes in saying, always be thankful for the current, I think it means current board of 2015, when they wrestled us from Ashley, but they've taken us as far as they can. This gives us genuine hope. We waste decent money every transfer window. Let's get professional people running the club and get back to competing year in, year out. there's actually a lot of Celtic fans getting in touch as well, and I think maybe this is worth saying, but William Sloan, well, I don't dare speak for all Celtic fans. I am very little, if any, concerns. Sure, as a club, Rangers may well improve with businessmen who know what they're doing, but they are a long way behind and will take many years to catch Celtic. Gone are the days of the 49ers can simply give them 40 million to match what Celtic just got from UEFA. FFP prevent it. Plenty of comments coming in. Keep them coming if you're watching at home.
Do you know what, Andy? My kind of response to that would be, I completely agree that Celtic are miles and miles and miles out in front right now, but I think this is a really smart way for Rangers to try and level the playing field as quickly as possible, and I think it gives them a fighting chance, Andy. I don't know about you, but for me, it makes, never mind make Rangers great again, it makes Rangers relevant again.
Yeah, I mean, listen, I think for Rangers fans, it's just something to be optimistic about, because let's put it this way, let's get it straight. I mean, like, without this, what was there for Rangers fans to be looking forward to with any kind of hope? I mean, Celtic, as you say, are miles, not just miles, but millions in front of Rangers. Millions and millions, 60, 75 million pounds. What is it Celtic got in the bank? So,
and they just banked 60 out of the Champions League as well, Andy.
So listen, I mean, like, what this does is at least give Rangers fans a reason to think, oh, something's better to come. It might not be tomorrow, but it might be a wee bit down the road. And at least, but without it, there is no hope. Celtic, you now look to be in a position that is unassailable without some kind of monumental self-inflicted mistake. And that's what, you could have said something similar about Rangers in the 90s. They were so far in front of Celtic. The only way for Celtic to catch up would be for Rangers to do something stupid, and we all saw what happened. So I think that at the very least this has given Rangers fans just a reason to start, even just to buy their season ticket again, because let's be honest, you were coming up to renewal time and there was a lot of fans already speaking just about the way this season has gone, the fact that Philippe Clement is still continuing to be manager, despite the vast majority of fans having lost faith in him. I think a lot of fans were starting to think, is there any point in renewing next year on the season ticket? So again, so it might become as convenient timing for the board in that sense, the current board in that sense, but I think there's no reason for them to at least be semi-optimistic.
And Andy, what about the official line from the club? What they saying officially about that? I'm surprised. I must say, one thing that has surprised me in all of this is that when we were sat here last night, I anticipated that Rangers would have to come out with a statement of sorts to explain the position on this, but not really. No,
in terms of the official club line, it's no comment on or off the record. That was the line given me earlier on today. They are doing what they do quite well, which is to pull the shutters down and say not much. So, listen, that makes our lives all the harder. We have to duck and dive and find other ways to get the information out of them. Keith, you've done very well so far, getting as much as we know already. But I think you're now at the point where somebody, I mean, obviously, Philippe Clement will be talking at his press conference tomorrow. I'm pretty sure this will be question number one when the hands go up at Murray Park tomorrow.
He'll probably come walk into the press with a big Sam hat on and all that.
Well, this is a point. I mean, I was speaking to somebody about this earlier on today. It's like, well, what does this actually mean for Philippe Clement? Because as much as he's been given a stay of execution by Patrick Stewart yesterday, the one thing we know that when new owners come into the club is that they generally like to bring in their own people too. So as much as Philippe Clement's been given a vote of confidence this week, I mean, how long does that last? I mean, what is the time frame we're thinking in this takeover? Maybe it might run to the summer before it's all signed and sealed. So
I'd be surprised if it took that long. I've seen it speculated that it could be finalised sometime between April and June, which isn't very specific. I think it's way further down the line than that. I think it will be sooner rather than later.
Reading between the lines, maybe this perhaps makes a bit of sense why they have been reluctant to sack him to this point. Maybe they're thinking, well, if we're going to be handing over the keys to somebody else, this can be a job that we can leave this in their entry rather than us having to deal with it and obviously pay the money as well. So, listen, it kind of makes sense in that sense. It's
the only thing that really makes sense, Andy, isn't it? When you look at how bad the results were the catastrophic Scottish Cup defeat at home to Queen's Park. The only thing that now with this, in hindsight, in retrospect, you can look back and say, okay, this makes sense. That's why you didn't sack him.
I mean, it does. And I watched obviously last night, you were talking about the lack of communication. I can understand why the club aren't wanting to say too much about this at the moment, because one, they want to get this deal over the line. They won't want to say anything or do anything that might jeopardise this, because as we've said, the supporters are desperate for change. But I bet you there's a couple of guys sitting in that boardroom right now that will be desperate to get shot of the responsibility of getting Rangers back to where they believe they should be, because it's a huge task that doesn't get any easier with every season. Celtic, tally up another big wad of notes. So, is there going to be any guidance for the club in the next few weeks? I'd be surprised. I mean, I don't think Patrick Stewart was basically dragged kicking and screaming to make a statement to the supporters this week on that matter, in terms of whether or not he says much at all about this new development with the takeover. I'm not sure you'll hear much until things are pretty much signed and sealed.
Mm-hmm. Keith, you were saying last night that talks are at an advanced stage.
Yeah.
In the comment section, rumours are rife. Paul McCorrickle says, rumour is verbal agreement already done weeks ago, and the paperwork is being drawn up now. I mean, is that, as far as you know, a little bit premature?
I think this is a very complex deal with lots of different layers and lots of different things that would have to be agreed upon. And it might be that you can't agree everything all in a one, or there may be various things that have been agreed. I don't know, speculating, but I can only come to that conclusion because of the way the shareholding at Rangers is configured. It's lots of people with lots of little chunks. So I think that in itself makes it a complicated deal to do. But again, I come back to, I'm sure there will be parts of it that are quite far down the line. Maybe there are other parts that are not so quite far down the line. Mm-hmm. But I think all in all, you've got a situation here which it really shouldn't require too much time to get the whole thing nailed down. And I think there's, it would be a different story if you felt there was a resistance to it, or if people around the table weren't willing and happy to be around the table. The feeling that I'm getting from this is I can't see any reluctant parties here. There might be one or two that feel they don't want to let go entirely and they want to be involved, and that might raise an issue. But I kind of get the feeling that all the parties around this thing are willing and ready and prepared to shake hands on something. So that's what I'm saying. If you've got resistance, it might complicate it. I'm sensing from this far that I don't feel any great resistance to it. On the contrary.
I think one thing to also mention, Keith, is in terms of what the cost is going to be in terms of to the 49ers, in terms of pulling this off, they're obviously going to have to deal with several individuals, rather. It's not just like going to one guy.
That's what makes it complicated, Andy.
I want a controlling stake in the club. No, there's 5, 6, 7, 8 guys that are going to have to be weighed in here, and all that money. I mean, in terms of Dave King, you can bet that he'll want what he's put in paid back to him. As for the other directors, I mean, they've all invested several £1 million, and have also loaned the club something in the region of sort of 23, 24, I think, £1 million going by the latest accounts. So that money has to be repaid, has to be covered, and that's money that's not going into club coffers. That's money that's just going to square up the people that have put their own money in. So, whatever money that the 49ers are setting aside for this, not the whole pot is going to be going right. There's Flint Clermont's transfer kitty for the next summer. There's going to be large chunks of money here that Rangers going forward won't see, and that might have to temper some of the expectations as well. It's not, if we're calling this, I don't know. I've seen back figures, £100 million potentially. If it's £100 million, not all of that is going to be going directly into club coffers. That's just going to execute
to buy people out.
The situation they're in right now.
Yeah. And you're totally right, Andy, but I think the thing that should excite and should keep the Rangers supporters really interested in it is if it was if it wasn't a kind of global conglomerate like the 49ers, and we're talking, and I hate to use the phrase, but wealth off the radar. Don't know who once said that. You're talking, this is legit. This isn't a billionaire from Motherwell, okay?
Yeah.
And if it was, then how do you pay? You're robbing Peter to pay Paul. You might just about get this deal over the line. These guys have got the sort of money, which means, we're going to have to pay a few quid here, but it doesn't mean that they're running out a few quid at the other end to finance and put in place the progression that they feel would be needed for the football club. So, do you know what I mean? They're not going to run out of money this long. Is basically what I'm saying.
I think you also have to go into the reasons of why. What is their motives for coming to Glasgow to do this? I mean, everyone says, there's no money to be made in Scottish football yet. Well, Celtic are sitting there, a well-run club. I think we need to absolutely start to set out. They are sitting there with millions of pounds of back because they're fantastically well run at the moment.
Mm-hmm.
But that shows you that if you run a club like Rangers and Celtic, if you run them well, that's the kind of sums you can mount up. And that's what I imagine an organisation like the 49ers will be interested in, because obviously the vehicle that they're using to go through this deal is their investment arm. This is what they're there to do. They're there to buy into clubs, spend a bit of money, but hope to make a return on it. I think we've seen that from Leeds. I think having a bit of a scout about today, that the fans down there are well aware that this is their interest in Leeds was in order to get them back into the Premier League, and perhaps at some stage flip it and sell it for a lot bigger sums than they paid initially. So 170 million, 70 million. So they'll believe that if they can get Leeds in the Premier League, competing at the top end, invest in the stadium a wee bit. They're talking about doubling Ellen Road, well, certainly expanding Ellen Road from, I think it's 37,000 up to 53,000. If they can do that, put all the box in place to have it as back to the size of the club it was in mid-60s, early 70s when they were in European Cup finals and winning English championships, then they can make a return on the profit. Now you go, well, Rangers, okay, they've not got the TV money you get in obviously in England, but if you can get them into the Champions League every year earning 40-50 million pounds, then you can make a return on your investment. So these are all big ifs. I mean,
and Andy, I think they'll be looking at, and I think that if we're all sitting here and we don't see the possibility for the boundaries around European football to change over the course of the next 5, 6, 7 years, then we're not paying attention. The Americans are paying attention to this. It's why they've been looking at it. It's why they've been wanting in. And I'm not talking about these specific Americans. I'm talking about the groups of potential American investors that have been hovering about clubs all over Europe for a while now. They can see how this plays out and they want a part of it. And Andy's completely right. I think that you would look at Rangers. This is why they're one of the most investable clubs anywhere in Europe right now, because you can buy them for a relative pittance. And you've got then the potential, you need to beat one team and you've got access to the Champions League. And I think they like those numbers.
Look, the comments, as I say, are coming in every second. There's a lot of fans, though, as you can probably imagine. Celtic fans are scoffing and refusing to believe this. CSC says, investors invest to make a return. Anyone thinking about making money in Rangers is living in cloud cuckoo land. I mean,
Andy's just pointed out.
Exactly.
If you look at your own club, you'll realise if Rangers can somehow mirror what Celtic are doing, there's a vast amount of money to be made.
Yeah. The problem with Rangers is, the reason why Rangers have lost money is because they haven't been run well enough.
Mm-hmm.
If they are run well, it's all there for them to make serious amounts of money in the way that Celtic have. Mm-hmm. And don't get me wrong, there's things that have to be improved. I think the stadium needs to be improved, it needs to be expanded. The fact that Celtic have got 10,000 more season ticket holders every single week puts Rangers at a disadvantage on a weekly basis, so that has to be addressed. Certainly the recruitment has to be multiple times better than it is at present, and even then it's improved, you would say, at least this summer compared to what's going the last couple of years before that. So it still needs drastic improvement, and obviously performances on the pitch. So these are all things that's what I'm saying, is that there's big hurdles to overcome. There's big hurdles to get Leeds back to where they want them to. And you've got to say, okay, there's Premier League riches £300 million a year, whatever it is in telly money down there that you can get. But as Keith rightly points out, to do that in the Premier League, you've got 20 other teams, all with massive budgets, all with the same ambitions to compete against.
All fighting for the same sweeties.
All Rangers have to do is finish ahead of Celtic, and listen, that's been harder said than done. Listen, we cannot hide from the fact that Celtic have absolutely dominated up here. What is it, 27 trophies out of the last 33, something like that. So
more than that, Daniel. I thought you had the stats.
Well, I think Rangers have won 3 of the last 42 competed competitions.
Yeah.
Which is
exactly.
St Johnstone have won a couple, and the rest are Celtics.
They've won the same amount in the last decade. Rangers have won the same amount of trophies as St Johnstone.
So there you go.
St Johnstone won the Scottish Cup in 2014 as well, so just over a decade.
So there you go. So Rangers have got, they've got some massive improvement to do. But as I said earlier on, I think this at least gives the supporters the sense that, okay, something is possible. It's not guaranteed, far from it, but at least now they have hope rather than despair.
Yeah. Look, the comments as well, some interesting ones. I'll put this to you guys. Craigie says, if the takeover happens, it'll take a couple of years to overturn the squad. But Eddie counters that by saying, if I can find it, I can understand the millions and millions Celtic are in front of Rangers. However, if you look at last season, really Rangers should have won the league. On the field, they're not that far apart. I mean, personally, I think there is quite a big difference on the field. But
I think there is now. But I mean, these are all swings around about. Rangers, if Rangers had the sliding doors moment, if Rangers had done what they should have done the year after Steven Gerrard's title winning team and backed that up, then this picture might be totally different right now. But as they stand right now, Rangers are a long, long, long way behind Celtic financially, on the pitch and off the pitch.
Yeah, look, I'm sure Rangers fans will make an argument, but they won the last Old Firm game, and they did, and they won it, convincingly. But one swallow doesn't make a summer. That doesn't mean that that they're ahead of Rangers. Ahead of Celtic on a pitch. They're not. They're nowhere near it. As a club, Celtic are just miles down the road, miles out in front. Right, disappearing over the horizon. On the pitch, I get the argument that it wouldn't take, and what you've seen from the way that the 49ers have been doing their business at Leeds, it's not as if they've come down there either and said, here's a stupid amount of money, just go and fill your boots, sign Lionel Messi, do this, do it. They've actually, it's been there's significant money, but it's been smart spending. They've invested cleverly. They've spent heavily in championship terms, but it's not ridiculous eye-watering amounts of money. And that's what I'm saying. I don't think Rangers need ridiculous eye-watering amounts of money to get competitive with Celtic on the pitch again. I don't think they're that far. But anybody that can't see that Celtic are, well, look, how many points are they? Celtic are 13 points better than Rangers right now. That's not, unbridgeable over time, but it will require a bit of work. It'll take a bit of heavy lifting, that's for sure.
I think we've seen a couple, more than once, 20-plus point title-winning teams, title-winning margins overturned over the course of the summer. Rangers Celtic both did it in the Advocat, Martin O'Neill era. You saw it, with Steven Gerrard's team, 23 points clear in the summer and end up losing the, I think Celtic again had the title wrapped up, if not before the split, 1 or 2 games after it. So, listen, these things can change quick, but it all comes down to decision making. The problem with Rangers is the decision making too often has been nowhere near up to standard. Celtic, they had one bad year, obviously the year that Rangers won the league, and after that they got their house in order, and they brought in a manager, Ange Postecoglou. Everyone was asking, who is this guy when he first comes in? It turns out to be an inspired signing. Then they go back and get Brendan Rodgers back, a guy who's an absolute proven, tested winner up here. So, they're Celtic got nothing to prove to anyone right now. They are the benchmark. It's up to Rangers with this new ownership group to try and get there. So far, they've got nowhere near it. We'll see what the 49ers can do.
Yeah, well, this is the comparison. The comparison is effectively at boardroom level, Rangers are Cyril Dessers and Celtic are Henrik Larsson. And that just about sums it up.
Yeah, I think that's fair. Look, we've had this comment, which I think is quite interesting. He's not got a name, so as a Leeds fan and a Rangers fan, if this goes through, there will be really no difference in the transfer spending. Only thing that will happen is that they will start to try and Americanise Rangers.
Okay.
So only if Leeds get in the Premier League, we can only see financially making a difference, because they haven't done anything impressive this last year or so. So that's from a Leeds fan.
That's not the general impression I've been getting from down the road. Andy, I know you were doing a bit on Leeds today, weren't you?
I had a wee scout about, looked at some of the forums, tried to speak to a couple of folk just in terms of the perception of them. I mean, listen, as I say, I don't think that anyone is under the misapprehension that if there's a chance to make a quick buck on Leeds, that these guys won't take it. But that all depends on them being able to get Leeds in the best possible position, which means back in the Premier League. It means sorting the stadium situation at Elland Road, and it means making sure that because we saw Leeds came up a couple of years ago and didn't last long. Was it 2 seasons before they were relegated again? Mm-hmm. So they have to get Leeds back in. I think we all need to remember that Leeds are a huge club. Before obviously the troubles of the early sort of part after the turn of the millennium, a huge club that were an established sort of top 5, top 6 team in the Premier League. They've fallen a long way below that. So in order for 49ers to get a return in whatever investment they've made down the road, they have to get Leeds sitting firmly established back at the top end of the Premier League, as I say, with the stadium fixed. I imagine they'll be looking to do something similar at Rangers. What they'll maybe thinking is that it's not, in terms of the money needed to get Rangers to a point where they are profitable again and allow them to build up the kind of cash reserves that they could then take out the club to pay their own directors for windfalls and things like that. Is it going to be the kind of sums that are going to be needed going into a Premier League where you've got Man City, you've got Spurs, you've got Manchester United, you've got Chelsea, you've got Arsenal, you've got Newcastle, where they stop. Up here, as Keith says, it's Celtic they need to finish ahead of, and as you pointed out, that's a big task right now. But when you've only got one team to beat, then it's maybe something that's easier to focus the minds on.
But that comment surprises me. That comment surprises me there from the Leeds fan, Andy, because I was under the general impression the Leeds fans were perfectly happy with it, and more than happy with the way that the club's run. I know Allardyce came out and had a paw at them. I think it was last summer for selling too many of their big players, and I think they raked in something like 150 million quid since Paraag Marathe taken charge.
Business sense comes in because, listen, I think
Rangers fans not be crying out for that.
When to sell at the right time. Too often Rangers have sold or not sold when the price was highest,
and then lost them for nothing.
And they are still counting the cost of that. Here we are, and you go back to whether it be Morelos, Kamara, Ryan Kent. I mean, there's numerous guys that they missed the boat with, basically, in terms of maximising profits. So, listen, these guys are, as I said, they're there to make money. I don't think this is because of any great desire to be. This is there's a great big pocket of Rangers fans sitting about the San Francisco 49ers stadium. They will
California loyal.
They will see this as an opportunity to make some money. So, I mean, judging by some of the comments I read today, I think there was a frustration. Obviously, they did their takeover. It was a sort of gradual build-up. I think they went in at 15%.
That's right.
30%, 45% before eventually buying the full shooting match.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe they were thinking, they were hoping for things to run a bit quicker than that. But your team, as I say, that has been, as a sleeping giant, has been out. I mean, how long were they out of the Premier League for? Best part of 20 years before coming back up a couple of years ago. To have them back on course and looking sitting pretty at the top of the Championship with plans to expand your stadium, I'm not sure how they can complain with the way that the club's been run right now.
A couple more comments before I wrap it up, guys. Rangers Easy OK says we have more than enough money to be handsomely dealing with the other 10 teams, and then it's on the 4 derbies. You'll be surprised how fast football can change. And Marzuno makes the point, I think it was you that mentioned this, Keith. He says, I don't think all these American owners all over Europe have given up on a Super League. That could be a factor as well.
They believe. I think it's fair to say there is a sense amongst particularly the American people that are investing into European football right now that the borders will soon dissolve in some way, shape or form. There will be a recalibration of what European football looks like and European competition. And I think everybody's jostling for position right now on it because they're envisaging a future in, I don't know what, let's just say for argument's sake, 5 years down the road where everything changes and all of a sudden it's like putting your chips down on the roulette table. You might just land on one which goes from you can buy today for, let's say for argument's sake, £100 million, you buy Rangers for 100 million. Well, if everything changes and your chip comes up in 5 years' time, who knows what sort of money, and that's why they're speculating and that's why they're looking around Europe. And it's not as if they're just doing it randomly. They're putting a lot of thought and consideration into who's best positioned to maximise a profit on. Mm-hmm. And, you know, the surprise for me is it's taken this long for a serious, credible bidder to come on the scene at Ibrox. I'm surprised about that.
Alex Richardson makes the point that only 6 English teams will progress when the Super League eventually does form. Celtic and Rangers are guaranteed to be there. Buy Rangers now while you can for the future. These guys apparently know it's coming. And just before we finish, Keith, I know you've probably have a couple more exclusives up your sleeve. Hugh Heath writes in saying Donald Trump and Putin trying to buy Rangers. Can you confirm or deny?
Wow.
Imagine that.
No comment on either.
No comment.
Well, listen, see, compared to some of the guys that have been at the top of the marble staircase over the last few years, I don't know. As I said the other day, meet the new brogues, same as the old brogues.
Aye.
Yes, we will have some more exclusives along the way. You never know, there might be one in the pipeline for later on tonight. Who knows? Who knows? Exciting story with lots of various things happening around it. So I'd be surprised if we didn't have another exclusive by later on tonight.
Aye. And of course, if you want to keep on top of the very latest news on this story, Record Sport is the place to do it. Keith, Andy, thank you so much for joining us in the Hotline Live as ever. Thank you again to all the comments that have been sent in tonight. We really appreciate it. And we will be back tomorrow, I think I'm right in saying, Keith?
As yet to be confirmed. We don't usually do a Friday, do we?
We don't normally do a Friday. We will definitely be back on Sunday, but we might be back tomorrow.
Yeah, we might.
Let's see how it pans out.
Let's see. It's a fluid situation, and I think, Daniel, what you're hinting at is there might be some big news.
Exactly.
So if there is some big news, then we'll be back in the usual time and place, even though we don't usually do it on a Friday, and even though I'm meant to be off, and I think you're meant to be off. Do you know what? For the love of it, yeah, we like breaking the news, bringing the news to the people, and we will endeavour to do so if there is news to break this time tomorrow.
Your old pal Gianni sums everything up by saying, make Keith Jackson great again.
That one's not workable. It's too long gone.
I was going to say, but be realistic, Gianni. Thank you very much for watching at home. And yes, stick with Record Sport for all the latest news in this story. Cheers.